Okay, so we're now at the Claymore Castings demo game. I'm just going to chat with Nick a bit about what's going on this table. So I've got a bit of a clue because I know it's basically a Scottish Civil War. Really.
Yes, so it's the Battle of Harlaw, which was fought in the northeast of Scotland. Earlier in the year 1410, Alexander, Earl of Mar, from the lowland part of Scotland, had invited Earl of Ross being the predominant sort of posh part of Scotland, lovely fiefdom, productive farms, good for business. Invited the Earl of Ross to come to his castle for a visit, and while at the castle, the Earl of Ross mysteriously died.
Oh dear.
So he obviously left his lands to his young daughter, Euphemia. She was under 8 at the time. So Ross, with such a young heir, needed someone to look after the lands. So Alexander, Earl of Mar, was basically, here's an opportunity. I'll declare myself Ward of Ross and thus gain control of the fiefdom of Ross. Donald, the Lord of the Isles, the sort of western part of Scotland and the sort of Hiberno-Norse, his wife was the sister of the deceased Earl of Ross, so he laid claim to the Earl of the fiefdom of Ross that way through his blood ties. As soon as Alexander, Earl of Mar, declared himself Ward, Duncan went, no chance. Decided he was going to go raiding, so raised his standard in Ardcharnish Castle on Mull and called his clansmen to him. Anecdotal tales say that about 10,000 Highlanders rallied to the cause. Most people don't think it was 10,000. That was the number that they exaggerated amongst the lowlands to scare the people into coming out to fight against them. So they set off from Mull, sailed across to mainland Scotland, worked their way up through the northern parts. They raided Dingwall, they sacked Inverness, destroyed the castle, burnt the bridges, took what they could, and then worked their way down towards Aberdeen. Meanwhile, Alexander Mar rallied the sort of southern lowland Scots forces. He called upon his own retinue. He brought out the Sheriff of Dundee. The Provost of Aberdeen brought forth the militia from Aberdeen. And obviously with Dundee and Aberdeen having been trading cities, with the continent, they were able to have a better equipped militia than most of Scotland at that time. So they marched north to confront Donald, Lord of the Isles. And on the morning of the 24th of June 1411, as Mar broke camp, they saw the Highlanders on the slightly raised part of the ground at Harlaw. The two lines formed, and then they basically just marched into each other. It was tactically a very boring battle. It was just lines pushing against each other, but as it was, individual combat was quite important in this time. So the interesting thing about the battle is we have Hector the Red down here. Hector the Battles. He was a famous tournament fighter in Scotland. He'd had opponents travel from the continent, France, Germany, Spain, to fight him in tournament. He'd gone to Europe to fight in tournaments. And on the lowland Scots side, there was Alexander Irvine. He was also a tournament fighter. And basically, both of them laid claim to being the finest Scotsman sword at that time. And if the tales are to be believed, they managed to find each other in the middle of the battle, challenge each other to a duel, and then the two finest swordsmen in Scotland promptly killed each other. How true that is, did they find each other, did they beat each other up, etc., nobody knows, but it's a tale about the battle. Ultimately, they fought for most of the day, about 900 to 1,000 dead on the Highland side, about 400 to 600 dead on the lowland side, and the fighting was so intense and so many men were slain that the actual burn or stream ran red, which gives the name Red Harlaw to the battle in some local tales. Eventually they just fought to a standstill. Everybody was exhausted. Donald, the Lord of the Isles, retreated back towards the Isles. The lowland Scots retreated back towards Aberdeen. Ultimately, at this time, to be a man, you were in the front lines. Your best fighters were always in the front lines. So losing that number of men on each side had sort of militarily decimated both forces. So they both claimed victory, but ultimately Donald wasn't in a position to push his claim forward any further. So by default, Alexander Earl of Mar inherited the fiefdom of Ross, and ultimately he would go on to found the Stuart dynasty and the line of kings. I mean, interesting other things about the battle are People believe also that the English at the time were supporting the Highland forces, not directly, with men, but with arms and money, because James I is a prisoner in England at this point in time, and they were looking to push Donald's claim forward, and Donald was a supporter of James I, so I think they were hoping they would potentially, if Donald wins, James I can come back to Scotland, be king, and push that line forward. Having grown up in the English court, he would be more amenable to the Scotland and England in alliance.
Well, that was a very good and interesting account. Thank you very much.
No problem. Happy to help.
Let's just mention before we go that these are all Claymore Castings figures, aren't they?
Yes, they're all Claymore castings, apart from a few Perry miniature marsh Arabs, which are pretending to be Irish kern at this side. There's a few Perry on the other side, and all the flags are by flags of war.
Right. And David's itching to say something.
Yes, most of the Highlanders and Elsmen are from antediluvian miniatures.
Okay, right, okay. Right, well, thanks very much, guys. Great looking game, and yes, have you enjoyed your day? Have you actually played it out?
Fantastic show.
Yeah, good. Right, thanks very much.
Cheers.
I'm now with Kevin from the Iron Brigade, and we're looking at a MAHDIST war game using his Up the Nile rules for one thing. Let's come back to the rules in a minute, but you can start by just telling us a bit about what's going on the table at the minute.
Yeah, well, this is a fictitious battle. We've set it in about 1883, just before the Gordon Relief Expedition. Our usual character, general character, Sir Archibald Pemberton Smythe, has been tasked with concentrating some forces on the Nile. He's gone off, his wife always accompanies him on campaign, so they've gone off to visit the ruins. His troops are having manoeuvres on the plain. They're not expecting any trouble, but of course some trouble's turned up in the force of the Mahdi with a whole load of Mahdists.
Yeah, okay, right, yeah. And yes, so we can see them in the square in the middle there, so they're waiting to defend against the onslaught of the Mahdists coming at them. And at the far end of the table, we've got a very nice looking terrain piece there, which I heard earlier was built by Gary Chalk, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It doesn't belong to me, it belongs to my partner in crime, Peter Nicholson. He got it commissioned about 15 years ago, so it's a really nice piece. It was commissioned for his Indian Mutiny collection, but we think it fits in with this, any colonial period.
Yeah, it does, definitely, yeah. And of course then we've got the other fort at the other end of the table.
Yeah, again, I think that was an eBay purchase. I'm not actually sure who made that. Again, it belongs to Peter.
Yeah. And moving on to the figures, what sort of manufacturers have we got here?
We've got a mixture. That most of the imperialist forces are Perry, with a few old connoisseur Egyptians mixed in. And the Mahdists are a combination of Old Glory and Perry's, plastic and metal.
Okay. Let's just talk a bit about the rules then. So your own rules, Up the Nile, which is a follow-up to your ACW rules, Bonnie Blue Flag. Is this a typical size game for those kind of rules?
No, this is probably on the larger side for us. I mean, we don't. This is on a 12 by 6. The maximum we can get is at Peter's house is an 8 by 6. But it works equally as well with 3 units of Imperials against maybe 5 or 6 units of Mahdists. In the rules, a typical Imperialist unit is made up of 4 bases, and it's up to the individual player how many figures he has on that base. So it's pretty forgiving as regards base sizes and figure numbers.
And we were talking earlier about some of the characteristics of the game that you particularly like yourself, and you particularly wanted to get in there. So can you just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. The element about the rules I'm most happy with, or I most like, is the fact that both players are involved in the turn. Because rather than the active player rolling to score hits, as is typical. It's your opponent that rolls to see how his troops react to coming under fire or in melee. We just take it for granted casualties are being inflicted. It's just how you react to that.
Yeah, okay, so it's a lot about the stress of the combat as much as removing bodies.
It is, yeah. I think too many rules focus on casualties, and real life battles don't necessarily rely on purely killing people.
Yeah.
It's a whole multitude of things, morale being the most important, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's a great looking table, and definitely had advantage checking out the rules as well. And thanks very much for showing it.
Okay, thank you.
With Ian Wilson of the Westbury Wargamers, and we're looking at a game of what, Ian?
It's the Battle of Madonna del Olmo, which is the War of Austrian Succession, but it's set in Italy. So we have Piedmontese and Austrians attempting to relieve the siege of Cuneo, and they're attacking the French observation corps under the Prince of Conti. The French are what they call the Gallo Span Army, which is French and Spanish.
Okay, right, it's a really packed table. You've managed to fit a lot of figures on there, haven't you? So there's a lot of action going on. And I like your signs informing everybody who's who and where all the they're the commanders, are they?
Yeah. It also helps us remember who we are.
Oh right, well that's always a bonus, isn't it? What game are you playing?
The rules are mine that wrote. Well, actually, they were written years ago when I belonged to Scimitar Wargames Group, and the group split up at that time, and I then modified and made the rules, if you like, my own version of them, really. They were actually published in your magazine quite some time ago.
Were they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
What a brilliant advert for anyone interested in looking in the Wargames Illustrator's vault to find Ian's rules. And what about the figures?
The figures are mainly front rank. All come in the front rank. There's a few Old Glory figures and a few Crusader, I think. But the great bulk is front rank, which I mean, the French have been in my collection probably 20 odd years, I think.
Right.
The Piedmontese are from, I think it was, is it B&B Miniatures who took over Lamming many years ago. They did a range of Piedmontese, which I bought loads of, and then they just disappeared, and that was the end of that, really, unfortunately.
It's very simple terrain, really, isn't it? But the figures do look fantastic. I mean, this period obviously helps, doesn't it? We've got some great colours here, and the cavalry and the tricorns, everything going on. It's a really colourful battle, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah. I mean, that is the attraction, I think, of mid-18th century. The flags, the kind of the turnbacks and the cuff colours. It's kind of one of those things that makes it come alive, I think, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I'll let you get back to the game, but thanks very much for letting us have a look around.
Thank you.
Right, with friend of the magazine, Mark here, let's have a look at your table. So, what have we got going on here today?
This is a representation of the Battle of Moy Pass, which was in September 1689 in Ireland. The Williamite army had just come in from Belfast and was trying to push down through Ireland. Moy Pass was one of two passes that they could actually travel through. The Duke of Berwick had been charged with defending MOIRY, which is just before this battle and crossing the river. The French general had built redoubts to make two redoubts with overlapping fields of fire, and this is representing the Williamite army under the Duke of Stromberg pushing forward. What happened in history is, as Stromberg moved forward, the Duke of Berwick actually retreated, and nothing actually happened apart from a couple of minor skirmishes. but it's an interesting and a different perspective rather than the normal Battle of the Boyne and the Battle of Aughrim, which is what most people actually portray.
Yeah, so in the actual battle, how many people were on each side, on the sides of the armies?
The army on the Williamite side was 1,200 infantry plus another 600 or 700 cavalry and dragoons. On the Jacobite side, there was around 3,000 to 4,000 that were in the area. The actual skirmish that happened was around 150 infantry and around 80 dragoons. But there were two fairly substantial armies that were always within 2 or 3 miles of each other that never actually got to close.
Okay, so but in your game they're getting involved?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, having a look at the toys on the table, who's the figures by? Are these all different manufacturers?
Most of them are either front rank or warfare miniatures, but there are some Wargames Foundry, there's some North Star 1672 range, but predominantly it is warfare miniatures with Foundry. Well, sorry, with front rank.
Yeah. And how about the terrain? Is that all? Is there any stuff that you've pre-bought? Is it?
Most of it, a lot of it is pre-bought. The Star Fort is from Warlord Games. The two houses are old resin pieces.
It's a very nice looking carriage you've got over there.
The carriage is a Old Glory carriage, which is in I think it's in their Musketeer range.
Yes, well, thanks for showing us around. So you've yet to get started, really, haven't you?
We're just about to get started in a moment. So.
Okay, right. Well, enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Right, so we're now looking at the BOONDOCK SAYNTES game here. Right, what exactly is going on? We're in the Northwest Frontier, I believe.
We are in the Northwest Frontier. We are doing, this is a 1919-1920 scenario, Third Afghan War. The Brits at that time used to leaflet the Afghan tribes to tell them they were going to bomb them the next day as a kind of be good and reduce the collateral damage. It's loosely based on a real scenario where a scouting reconnaissance leafleting was brought down by a lucky shot, and we've made that a de Havilland bomber today, which was a devil of a job to source. We also made it such that one of the occupants was the HRH on a tourist safe leafleting run. So there's a bit of a pulp interest to the game. At some point, hopefully soon, there's an air ambulance piloted by Flash and his wingman, Iceman, at the back there in the de Havilland fighter bomber. The idea is you've got to try and navigate a landing here to rescue the party. In between times, the relief columns here, Indian cavalry, I should say, British column here, Indian column here. That's having to navigate through a very busy town, being upset by various insensitive American Hollywood film stars. And over here, these are really the fighting. They just form a defensive perimeter and interpose between HRH and a very angry hornet's nest of Afghan tribesmen and cavalry, which the de Havilland happened to spot on its way down.
There's a heck of a lot going on, isn't there?
There is a lot going on, sort of stories within stories here, particularly as they're about to start off in the town here, which should get very lively very soon.
There's some nice looking terrain. I mean, it's very striking rocky outcrops here. Are they?
They're the things that when you're carrying them in, always walk with bent legs and it looks like Fred Flintstone bringing rocks from home. but in fact they're my friend's neighbour's settee that was cluttering up their front garden, I think waiting for disposal. I don't think he lives where that goes on frequently, but we've just ripped the foam out of those, done a lot of plucking, PVAing and scattering, so they're big but they don't weigh anything. And the buildings are pretty much all of a flavour. They're not exclusively crafty prints from eBay, but they largely are. But they add to the flavour. We've got some hidden contours under the game mats, as you can see. So I can't lay any claim to building buildings, but all the other terrain, the trees, the olive trees, and the fields, and anything rocky. Is down to me.
They're olive trees, are those ones that
olive trees and other fruit trees. Afghanistan at this particular time was famous for its orchards of all sorts of varieties. Some opium, but not on the scale as in India at the time. And of course, opium's become more likely since. And for our pulp games, which we'll be focusing on the rest of the year, we've got some evil Russians, and there are always evil Russians in stranger fiction. So that's what they are here. Are in the fort at the back. We've got all sorts of American Hollywood weird stuff going on down here, and then we've got the whole game's governed by event cards and random events for entering buildings and what happens in some of those. Some of them are a little on the crude side, so I won't tell you what they are now.
What rules are you using for the game?
Setting the Easter blaze, and largely, weirdly, it suits what we wanted to do. So the event cards and the chance cards are a game inclusion, but you write them yourselves to suit the scenario in their set of rules. The rules are very simple. They're perfect for this kind of game where you don't have to remember all the deals, particularly if you've been drinking. And they sort of lend itself to the characterisation, the leader values, the shuffle. It's a pack-driven game, or it will be in a moment. Now everything's on, and you can add all the pulp themes that you wish.
Yeah, I've seen it used a lot for big scale games like this. People like the simplicity.
Very simple, but quite, and it's very clever the way that it crafts the air, land and sea elements as well. So the aircraft, very simple rules, but very effective with, I think quite realistic outcomes for saying it's a game.
Yeah. And how about the figures? What manufacturers have we got?
Well, all sorts and everything. 1920 is a bit of an odd time. Lots of Empress, Jazz Age imperialist figures and vehicles. The transports, British and Indian, are matchboxy type things off eBay, and then they're very quick and easy to resort for this. The mountain guns here are all Empress, with all their all of those characters there made that field gun there. So we've got lots of cobblestone, some brigade games there, a lot of woodbine design. Really handy for the Wolsey helmeted infantry and the Gurkhas, and Sikhs too, to tell a lie. There's some Perry's boys disguised as 1920s over there, and some artisan Second Afghan War cavalry sort of do it a pinch, particularly obviously the Indian ones rather than the Brits. Afghans, there's all sorts of everything in there. Again, Empress for the later Afghans, the Jazz Age ones, and then there's ironclad, Perry's, Foundry, you name it, they're all in there somewhere.
Well, it's a marvellous looking game.
Oh, thank you.
Well done, and thanks for bringing it and showing it us, and enjoy the game.
I hope to. We're just about to refill a glass, so if you fancy one. He's got an etched glass ready for any guests if you want one.
Oh, well, I'm all right at the minute, thank you. I'm working, I can't drink on the job.
Like a good policeman.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, thanks very much.
No, it's all pleasure.
Cheers. Right, I'm now here with Dave, one of the many Daves that you find at a Wargames Show, and we're looking at a rather interesting For King and Parliament game. It's interesting mainly because the figures are very big. What are these figures and where did they come from?
They're 54mm figures and they're a call to arms.
Right,
plastic figures.
Plastic figures, right.
Yes.
They do look great. I mean, have you painted them up?
I've painted two of the units, but because I've got so many projects on, like all Wargamers, somebody's painted the rest for me.
Oh right, well, are they a joy to paint?
Lovely.
Yeah. do you normally spend your time painting 28mm, and these are something a bit different?
No, I've actually got 60mm Ancients from Expeditionary Force, and I've got 54mm Expeditionary Force Victrix figures.
Oh right, okay, so you're a big scale man then.
Yes, although I do 6mm, 12mm, 28mm as well.
Right, okay, right. Well, they do look very striking. And so you're playing Simon Miller's rules.
That's right, for Kingdom Parliament.
Yeah, so you can recognise it by the sort of grid system
That's
on
right.
the table. What's going on here? It's an ECW battle, yeah?
ECW battle, yes.
Is it anything historical, or is it...
No, Andrew Brenton, who helped to write the rules, he's written The Mystery at Styles. It's all Agatha Christie based.
Is it?
So somewhere we've got Scoutmaster Colonel Hercule Poirot.
Wow.
And we've got Colonel James Japp.
Oh, right, okay, right. Has someone actually been murdered?
Not yet.
They're about to be, right. Okay, right, well, yeah, thanks for showing us around the table.
Thank you.
Okay, right, so looking at this lovely looking World War II Tobruk based game, isn't it? Yeah, so we're talking to Simon here. He's here with his group of gaming buddies, basically, putting a game on at the Other Partizan. So, yeah, so based on the film Tobruk, using bolt action?
Yes.
Okay, and what's going on? We've got an amphibious landing over here, haven't we?
We've got the convoy coming into town with the SIG disguised as Germans, as in the film, and trucks containing British prisoners, heading off to knock out various installations, the radar, the communications installation, and possibly capture the prominent German general standing in front with his hands behind his back.
Oh yeah.
Knock out the bunker so the commandos can get ashore in the landing craft to support them, and knock out the dockside installations, the fuel dump, ammunition, and the tank park.
Okay, right. Is this a game you played before?
Yeah, we've done 2 or 3 previous various scenarios, if you like, based on the same thing. Yeah.
Right. It's nice looking terrain. I mean, you've obviously got a mix of different things here. MDF and
yeah, there's a mixture of all various manufacturers, if you like, and stuff we picked up, but it all seems to sort of blend together, really.
Yeah.
We did start off firstly with the mat because we do colonial, and it was a case of what else can I use the mat for that's is similar scenario. So World War II desert seemed to fit it, so it's a case of getting more use out of the mat, basically.
Yeah. And how about the figures? Are they all Warlord figures or from various manufacturers?
I've basically raided the Perry catalogue.
Oh, Perry, maybe.
Yeah, there are some Warlord mixed in. There's the odd Company B vehicle, but by and large everything is Perry. There's the Warlord landing craft, and the odd motorbike Warlord, and the odd Rubicon one as well.
Okay, well, it's a very nice looking game. Thanks very much for showing us around.
It's taken about 2 years to pull it all together.
Has it? Right, okay, yeah, well, that's a nice bit of effort, well done.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. With Barry Hilton, who's got a lovely looking game on today at the Other Partizan show. Barry, what's going on here and why?
Well, this is the launch of With Talon and Claw, which is the supplement to War of the Three Kings, which is the third edition of Beneath the Lily Banners. Bit of a mouthful there. And what we're doing today on this game is showcasing the Swedes against the rest of the world, really. And on the opposing side to the Swedes in blue, nearest us here, are all their opponents from the whole period of the war, all together. So we've got the Saxons, we've got the Russians, we've got the Prussians, the Danes, the Cossacks, and who else do we have? Yeah, we've got some Tatars as well. And the Prussians, they're all there.
This is not a factual encounter, is it?
No, it's just a sort of, if you like, a sort of compendium of what happened over 21 years. And so we're just getting everyone on the table just to make a little bit of a spectacle to launch the book. So some of these troops on the other side would have fought together and did fight together very often against the Swedes, but never did we have the whole assembly in this kind of scenario.
Right, yeah. Can I just ask you about a few of the things on the table then?
Yeah.
So we've got some great looking figures, the manufacturer being whom?
Well, Warfare Miniatures,
Really?
mostly. What a surprise, eh? You wouldn't have expected me to say anything else. Yeah, so they're mostly Warfare, but there are some other little touches on here from other manufacturers, some foundry stuff from way back over there, and actually some figures that I painted 30 years ago myself from Corvus. I don't even think Corvus exists anymore, but I've got some Corvus Huns in there as some Tatars, and I'm just looking around to see if there's anyone else's stuff. No, that's pretty much it, really. Yeah, mostly Warfare.
Well, some of your pieces are almost vignette-like in the quality. I mean, we've got the big guns here with the limbers behind them and stuff, and the ammunition wagons. They're trying to get the wheels out of the mud there, aren't they?
Yeah, so I like to do these little vignettes because I like to tell a story on the bases if I can. I like to make everything look like a little scene, even the bases that are part of the bigger units. It takes a little bit extra time to do that, but maybe not as much as people might think. And you can make it look interesting. Ranks of toy soldiers are really nice, but if you can tell a little story, then I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and your flags always look marvellous, of course.
Yes, well, most of the flags here are from our range, Warfare's range, designed by Clarence Harrison in the States. Quindia Studios is his mark. But there's also the odd flag that's been hand painted on canvas, which is something that I like to do. But so we've got a bit of a mix, but we've got quite a wide range of flags for this period. It's a lovely, colourful period as well, as you can see.
So, yes, the new book is out now, available from...
it's available now, but it's available at the show today from Nick here at North Star. And will be available from our website now it was part of the pre-order, but I'd like to say and thank Wargames Illustrated for their input into the book.
Well,
fantastic.
I mean, that's obviously what I've been building towards.
Well, of course you've got to, but professional team, and they did a grand job. I mean, you can see when you look at the book how well produced it is. Your team did a fantastic job, Asun particularly, obviously being the main star there.
Right, well, great looking game. Thanks very
Dan.
much for bringing it along, and we'll see you again soon.
Fantastic.
missing out on loads of benefits, including access to the Wargames Illustrated Vault, freebies, discount vouchers, PDFs of the latest magazine, and more. Find out more about WI Prime by following the link.